Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Tony Holmes, the practice lead for Solutions Architects Public Sector at Pluralsight. Tony, thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And Tony, just to get started here, we've been hearing a lot about the effects of generative AI in the federal sector here. It's probably worth taking a half step back here and just giving a little bit of perspective on this in the context of other technological shifts we've seen in the workplace. Where do you place generative AI?
That's a really good question. I think first, let me start with the caveat. One of the frustrating things about generative AI and the way that the industry is at the moment, as fast as I write information, I give interviews, I give talks and things, within no time at all, the landscape has shifted or things have changed. So from that perspective, everything I say today is in the perspective of what's relevant today, which may not be 2 weeks from now. So I just wanted to put that in there. But I like to use a comparison between generative AI and the advent of the desktop PC, and the office suites that came with it. So Microsoft Word, WordPerfect, all those good things back in the day. I think it's quite a fascinating parallel. Just as the introduction of desktop PCs revolutionized how we did our day-to-day work in an office, and making tools like word processors and spreadsheets over time became indispensable. So if we look at that era, there were so many people panicking because word processors were going to make executive assistants obsolete, because obviously people would write and create their own documents. And obviously this didn't happen. It simply changed the dynamics of the role. And likewise, another example I use is desktop publishing. When the desktop publishing apps first came out, all of a sudden, all the graphic designers were going to become obsolete. And we know today that, in fact, that hasn't happened. All that happened was they were able to do more and become more productive. So the biggest attrition typically happens in the workplace, as it does with all technology shifts, not randomly, but instead it most often happens to those that are least willing to adapt to the changing environment. If you think about it, generative AI is poised to redefine our toolkit that we use for work. It's not really just another tool for a specific niche, but it's going to be a fundamental shift in how we approach problems and execute tasks. I think the key difference is the scale and speed of this transformation. Generative AI's integration into the workforce isn't about just learning a new software application. It's about adapting to the technology that can learn and adapt to us and to our workflows in many ways, and actually think alongside us.
All right. And Tony, just to stay on that train of thought here, looking forward, what do you think the impact of generative AI will be in transforming the average employee's workday?
If you could imagine having a helper that's versed in virtually every aspect of your focus area, one that can learn and grow with you and you can learn to interact with, I think generative AI is going to be like that, but on a significantly larger scale. For the average employee, this means that a lot of routine tasks that we do can be automated. We can look at complex data quickly and kind of analyze it in real time. And we can work with the generative AI to help, brainstorm creative solutions, which allows people in the workplace to focus on the much more strategic and creative and interpersonal aspects of their roles. And I think that's really important, because generative AI is very good at a particular set of tasks, but it requires context from us. The human is still very much driving the creativity and the strategy. I think the workday becomes more about steering the ship, so to speak, armed with insights from a data-driven AI co-pilot, if you like. Beyond that, generative AI, I think, will transform our productivity and workday like a personal assistant. So helping us better plan our day, learn new information, and so much more.
All right. And going back to your earlier point, Tony, there was some anxiety with the desktop age of PCs coming about, then the job displacement anxiety there. There's a new flavor to that anxiety about AI and what impact that could lead to job displacement now. Of course, we've also seen some other narrative about this augmenting the workforce that we already have in place. So given those two trains of thoughts, where do you see generative AI fitting into this narrative of workforce and productivity?
Yeah, it is a valid concern, but I do think that history has shown us that technological advancements lead to shifts in the job market. So we do see where the concern comes from. But generative AI is a lot like any transformative technology. It brings a lot of opportunities for workforce development. And I don't think that the picture is quite as bleak as people are tending to paint, especially, in the media. It makes a great headline to say AI is coming for your job, obviously. But I was reading a recent working paper for MIT called Beyond AI Exposure, which tasks are cost effective to automate. And it analyzes the potential for job displacement across different roles and different verticals. And there are some interesting stats that came from the report. So, for example, even though 36% of jobs have at least one task that could be automated by AI, for most jobs, this is a small fraction of the overall duties involved in that role. And when looking at the share of total worker compensation, only 1.6% comes from automatable tasks. So, if you look at it from that lens, the working paper found that the main reason that most automation is not economical is because of the high upfront fixed costs in developing very customized AI systems, which it would have to be in order to completely replace a person's job. Typically, the benefits don't outweigh the costs except at large scales. So I think what we're much more likely to see, at least in the short to medium term, is that while substantial automation is possible, the displacement is likely to be much more gradual in pace. And I think the key to mitigation is to focus on getting your teams to embrace the upskilling and reskilling along the lines of AI in a broad way. Just as proficiency in word processing and spreadsheets became essential in the early days of desktop computers that we mentioned earlier, I think learning about AI literacy and bringing it to the organization as a fundamental skill will not only create new roles, but also enhance existing ones. And what that means is not displacement, but actually making the existing roles more impactful and more fulfilling. It's much more about working alongside generative AI and taking away the mundane stuff that we don't necessarily like to do by using its capabilities, and actually elevating our roles to become a more meaningful, creative, and strategic person within that role.
And Tony, a moment ago, you were saying how in the not so distant future, workers can expect generative AI to work as a virtual kind of assistant or kind of a co-pilot working in the background, helping them out to do these tasks. To prepare for that not too distant future, what should agencies do to prepare their employees for this integration of generative AI that might be coming pretty soon?
Yeah, that's a question we're often asked in my role at Pluralsight. So what we're doing with our customers is we're helping them to approach generative AI with a broad-based mindset, recognizing that almost everybody in their workforce today can benefit from the use of generative AI. Basically, if you're using a computer, you can probably benefit from the use of generative AI. It has a huge potential to enhance the work of everybody from administrative staff to senior executives and everybody in between. I guess the preparation or where we help our customers start is with demystifying generative AI for employees, making its principles and its potential applications and ethical considerations accessible and understandable for everybody. Training programs, we're so used to training specific technologists at specific tasks. But in this case, I think it shouldn't be confined to tech teams, but extended across the board, ensuring that each department, each role understands how generative AI can creatively be applied to their specific contexts, not just today, but going forward in the future. And I think this inclusive approach to upskilling and cross-skilling underscores the message that generative AI is not a niche tool for a select few, but a transformative technology that offers advantages across the entire spectrum of workplace roles. Emphasizing hands-on experience and encouraging experimentation, fostering a culture of continuous learning is going to be key in making generative AI an integral part of everybody's toolkit. And what that's going to result in is going to result in driving collective innovation and productivity across our agencies.
All right. And you were mentioning how generative AI can really be a useful tool with kind of the brainstorming and the creative nature of people's jobs. Looking forward, what role do you see generative AI playing in that future of workplace collaboration and innovation?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I refer back to my caveat earlier that, the comment I give on this is probably somewhat relevant today, but may not be 2 or 3 weeks from now. But as I speak with my customers, I tell them that generative AI obviously is going to be a game changer for productivity. Everybody agrees with that. Collaboration and innovation as well. I mean, the innovative aspect is significant. Because we can essentially democratize innovation by allowing anyone to generate ideas and prototypes, and then we can riff backwards and forwards with generative AI to massively expand our ideas around what we're thinking and develop those ideas by going backwards and forwards. So I don't think innovation in the workplace is actually going to be limited to just specialized roles anymore. And, going on from that aspect, I think it's also going to be great for augmenting brainstorming. So using prompts and queries, the generative AI can give teams an idea co-pilot, again, going backwards and forwards. So when we try and brainstorm within team meetings, we can actually use generative AI to actually introduce more possibilities and more potential abstractions into those kinds of meetings. And as I mentioned earlier, automating routine collaboration tasks. Imagine anybody's role, there's always a percentage of, there's this stuff I've got to do and it's really tedious and I have to do it every day, but it's got to be done because it's really important. Imagine being able to hand that off so you can actually focus more on the strategic aspects of your job. Who can I collaborate with? How can this information be shared interagency? And actually, we can actually focus on working more collaboratively because the mundane stuff can potentially be offloaded to some extent. And information lookup, scheduling, note-taking, lots of routine collaboration work can then liberate teams to focus on much higher value strategic tasks. I think the end result is likely teams that are augmented with AI collaboration are going to unlock more innovation. And I think that's vital within our agencies. We all want to see more innovation. And I think the ability to be able to free our teams to create that innovation gives us a vision of the future where we can use our strategic thinking, we can use our emotional intelligence, if you like, and combine that with a vastly accelerated execution. So I think, as I said before, in the short to midterm, rather than replace human jobs, I think generative AI might actually, in fact, realize or help people to realize untapped directions and personal strengths within the career that they already have. So I think overall, I think it's a net positive.
Tony, a lot of great points. I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank today's guest, Tony Holmes, the practice lead for Solutions Architects Public Sector at Pluralsight. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the AI and data exchange.